Although it didn't seem like it, this happened quite a while back, probably over 10 years ago. I was in the later years of high school and was home alone. My parents were at a wedding that required them to stay at a hotel, and my brother worked the night shift at the time. My family lived in a very well known East Coast city and blue collar neighborhood that was starting to take a nosedive. As a teenager, I was a bit of a loner. I wasn't a nerd or anything, but I was a big dude who had friends that went on dates, but I'm a natural introvert, so I cherished the rare alone time that I got. This weekend I was looking forward to engaging my normal, empty house routine, play some PlayStation on the big screen TV, then order a late night takeout dinner, and pig out while watching some Dragon Ball Z. Then around 2 a.m., I fell asleep on the couch with my old dog, Cecil. Cecil was a beagle who was as old as the hills, and had been in our family for about 8 years. He was quiet and peaceful and spent time begging for food or sleeping. Unlike most beagles, Cecil never howled or barked. He was more than content to rest his head on your lap and spend the night there. At approximately 1 a.m., I had just finished the last slice of pizza and was dozing off on the couch when I heard a bang coming from the back alleyway. I didn't think much of it. Anyone who was living in the city knows noises happen all the time in the middle of the night. Cecil's head popped up off my lap and the hair on his back stood up. He was always a bit skittish, so I calmed him down and started dozing off again. Not more than 2 minutes later, I heard another bang and Cecil did something I had never seen him do before. He leapt off the couch and ran like the wind towards the door leading to the basement, barking and growling like a dog twice his size. The look on his face reminded me of the German Shepherd canine unit. I'd never seen him like that before, which got my adrenaline pumping. Through the dog barks, I could make out a persistent banging. There was a seldom used door in the basement that led to our back alleyway. It was old and rusted and was hard to open, even with a key, and it made a lot of noise. I soon realized that someone was trying to break into my house through my basement door. Quick little bit of context for anyone who hasn't lived in a bad neighborhood. If someone tries to get into your house and moves on after they realize the door is locked, they want your stuff. If someone is persistently trying to get into your house despite the door being locked, well, they want you. Knowing this, I rushed upstairs to grab the heavy wood baseball bat that I kept under my bed for situations like this. Then I headed down to the basement. I probably should have ran, but I was a macho teenager with a tough guy complex, and plus I had nowhere to go. While I'm heading down the stairs to the basement, Cecil blows past me with the speed and aggression of a dog half his size. Suddenly I hear a man's voice say, "Oh fuck," and the banging stops. I didn't call the cops or anyone else, which is probably the dumbest thing I've ever done. I just sat up for the rest of the night with a bat in my hand. My brother came home that morning and I told him what had happened. We went to the basement door to take a look, and we gave it a tug to open it. The whole door fell off. This psycho was one good shove away from getting into my house, but old Cecil scared him off. Pretty sure that lazy fat old dog saved my life. I'm a graffiti artist. I work on pieces in my city of Birmingham of the United Kingdom. This happened on the east side of the city. There's a canal that runs through the city which is naturally full of tags and graffiti pieces, as if it's a pretty quiet spot, but certain parts of it are visible to the public. It isn't easy to get down there into the canal, but me and my friend stumbled across a hidden ladder in a rundown car park on the back streets of the east side. We climbed down and realized we could walk the whole length of the canals. The water was pretty high up on this day, so we had to be careful. After about 30 minutes, we had painted over old ruined pieces of graffiti and created new tags and just generally had a good time. That's when we noticed a man standing on the other side of the water. At first, we were startled, throwing our cannons back into my backpack and getting ready to run, as we thought we were about to get caught. However, the man just stood there. For a long while, I stood watching him as he stared lifelessly at us. It was pretty unnerving. The guy had to be about 40 years old with gray hair, but he was standing so abnormally, his legs parted evenly and his arms parted from his body at his side. He didn't move, he just stared. I looked at my friend Josh, and he looked back at me. The looks of it unnerved. He decided to shout, "Hey," at the man, and then, "You alright, buddy?" At first I thought this was a bad idea, but I just let it happen to see the man's reaction. Nothing, he just stood there like a mannequin. We were pretty shaken up. We just started to walk farther down along the canal and continued painting. About an hour later, we pretty much forgotten about the whole thing. We were now down to our last 2 cans of paint, so we were about to call it a day, when I stepped back to see what we created just then. I noticed the same man from before standing in the middle of the dirty canal, just staring lifelessly at us. I was so surprised to see him that I dropped my can in the canal and turned to face Josh. He noticed the man too. The man took the first step we'd seen him take all day towards us. We dropped the cans and sprinted across the path back to the water. We pretty much ran all the way back to the city center. While we caught our breath, we tried to figure out what the hell we just experienced. I used to live in a rural part of the UK, and I've lived in rural areas most of my life, so I was used to long walks, occasionally at night, especially before I could drive. They never bothered me too much. I'd get creeped out occasionally, but this one night was the most terrifying experience I've ever had. There was this one friend who used to live roughly 3 miles away from my house. He had cool parents, and my other friends and I would go often to his house and play video games and hang out. Occasionally, this meant walking home at night if I stayed late. There were two ways back from his house. The roadway, which was about 5 miles long and took about 30 to 45 minutes. The roads were very quiet and eerie sometimes, but they were lit by street lamps, so it never bothered me walking this way. The other way was a shortcut through some woods, which took about 2 miles, and the wooded bit was about a mile or so long. I often favored the wooded shortcut and have probably walked it over 100 times. The woods were dark, however, combined with the lack of ambient light due to living in a rural area, and you had an absolute abyssal darkness. Luckily, most of the time I had my phone light to walk with, but sometimes my phone would die or the battery would be so low the flash wouldn't work. I'd have to use my screen light. As you probably guessed by now, this is one of those occasions. I remember my friends and I had just finished watching a film. It was nearly 10 p.m., so we all left my friend's house and headed our separate ways home. I contemplated briefly which way I should go and decided to take the shortcut through the woods. I started walking away from his house and towards the path that headed up into the woods. The street lights dimmed as I entered the fields before the woods. I glanced at my phone and saw my battery was really low, only enough power left for a couple of minutes of flash, and then I'd have to use my screen for light. That wouldn't last the whole way either. As I saw the tree line approaching, I switched on the flash and followed the well-trodden path into the dark. To my dismay, my light died within seconds of entering when I flipped my phone over to try and shine the way using the screen. As I walked, I looked out for all the familiar landmarks I was using to see to ensure I was heading in the right direction. Funky tree stump, check. Half-fallen fir tree, check. Enormous puddle I had to walk over, check. All was going well. I was halfway through the woods when my phone completely died. I remember the moment it happened, I was engulfed in darkness. I'm not sure if you've experienced this level of darkness before, but it was so dark I couldn't even see the outline of my hand, centimeters in front of my face. Naturally, my pace slowed considerably, and I started holding my hand out in front of me to make sure it wasn't going to walk into a tree or something. I continued walking for another minute or so until all of a sudden a pungent smell hit me, cigarette smoke. I glanced around but couldn't see anything. Then I heard a cough. I wasn't alone. Thoughts raced through my head. What would it be out in the middle of the woods in the dark? Are they following me? Am I lost? I quickened my pace again, throwing a little caution to the wind. I carried on walking and tripped slightly on a branch. As I regained my balance, I heard another sound of branches breaking underfoot, which sounded like right behind me. The snapping turned into fast footsteps that grew louder and louder. I started sprinting. I felt the well-trodden path turn to brush. I felt branches, logs, and plants hitting my legs. It wasn't long before I fell hard. I was lying on the floor holding my knee. I could still hear branches snapping around me and a voice muttering something. I didn't dare move. Then all of a sudden, they turned on a torch. I couldn't see anything except for the beam of light which seemed to be eaten quickly by the darkness of the forest. I lay motionless on the ground as the beam swept through the trees. I could still hear the person's mumble in a deep growl. The crunching of footfalls grew and grew. They were only several feet from me by this point. I couldn't breathe. The light went out, the snapping of branches grew, and then nothing. Quiet. My eyes were wide open, but I couldn't see anything. Then I could hear wheezing right above me. I wanted to cry. I wasn't sure if the person could see me or not. They could have been staring right at me, and I wouldn't know. This carried on for about 5 minutes until the crunching of leaves and snapping of twigs started up again and got fainter and fainter as they moved away from me. I remained laying down for another 5 or 10 minutes, contemplating my escape. Like an idiot, I ran out the path and wasn't sure which way was back to it, or was home. I didn't really care. I thought I was going to walk in one direction until I left the woods and get home from there. I knew as soon as I started moving again, if the person was still in the woods, they would hear me. Should I run or try and sneak out? I opted for the latter. I slowly rose to my feet, listening constantly to my surroundings. I picked a direction and started walking. I wasn't perfectly quiet, but quiet enough to be sure I wouldn't be heard from too far away. I kept hearing snapping sounds of rustling in the distance, and every time I froze, I'd hold my breath until I was happy no one was there, and then started walking again. I repeated this pattern for what felt like an eternity until eventually I found the path. I screamed for joy in my mind and sped up my pace. After another 10 minutes, I saw it, lights, street lights filtering through the trees. I'd never been so happy to see a street lamp, but as I progressed to the end of the woods, my heart sank. At the end of the path was a black silhouette, unmoving. In contrast against the light background was the dark figure of a man. What should I do? Maybe it's a different person. Perhaps it's someone walking the dog, I thought. I froze and I watched them silently, but they didn't move at all. They just stood there like they were guarding the entrance to the woods. I didn't know what to do. By this point, I had enough. I was so close to getting out, I decided to run straight towards the exit, straight towards this person. I was a 6-foot young man. If they wanted to stop me, they'd have to hard job of it, I thought, so that's what I did. I started sprinting. The figure grew and grew, and as I reached them, I stepped into the side. I heard someone growl fuck wildly, and I felt something clip the back of my head and tug the back of my jacket. I cleared the sheep gate in one leap and sprinted into the light. I eventually stopped running when I could see the first house and looked back. The entrance to the woods was quite far away now, and I couldn't see anyone standing by the entrance. Relaxing a bit more now, I finished my walk home.